Friki de Bici, riding my bici around the very mean cobblestone streets of Valencia, Spain. All right, smoother ground for a minute at least until we have somebody on the sidewalk. I should not be riding on the sidewalk, but don't like that cobblestone. Obviamente, this is not a bike lane. Obviously, this is not a bike lane, but it might as well be one because despite the bumpiness, it's safe. And that's what you'll find in the old city and really throughout the city of Valencia, is that you have environments that are hospitable for riding your bike or getting around on foot. That's the way this city is designed. That's the goal. And in a lot of places, particularly in the United States, but really around the world, it's not the case. That said, advancements have been made and continue to be made, and there's always somebody pushing against them, which is the source of many of these bike lane controversy stories I'm seeing in my Google News feed and I plan to cover on the Friki de Bici YouTube channel and going forward. However, there are some positive stories too, and I figured it made sense to cover a couple of those today to set the scene, then get into some of the more negative stuff later. Everybody leads with negativity these days, and I don't want to do that. I want to lead with positivity. So, the pandemic had a big effect on cycling, right? Huge effect, actually. There were bike sales skyrocketed during the pandemic. In fact, if you went to a bike shop at some point, you had difficulty getting a bike. It was that crazy. And that was a great thing for bike shops. By the way, I worked at a bike shop, I don't know, maybe about 15 years ago in Culver City, California. It's a great experience. But since then, bike shops are struggling, right? Demand is crashed and everybody has a bike. So it's very difficult to even get anywhere near that level of the boom that they had experienced, unfortunately. So it's a tough time for bike shops right now. But during that time, with this appetite for cycling and people maybe not wanting to ride on public transportation because they were worried about getting sick, the conditions were ripe to take advancements that had already been happening in bicycle infrastructure in cities and advance them. And I think a lot of city governments that had these objectives saw the opportunity to do it with less resistance, right? People were focused on other things, and maybe the appetite for alternative modes of transportation was just bigger and better. So they went ahead with it. And I read an article about London the other day that said all of a sudden cycling is cool again in London. Apparently you were looked at like a weirdo if you just rode your bike prior to like 2019, 2020. And now this article claims that like 56% of peak time traffic in London is done by bicycle. And bicycling has just exploded in the city over the last 5-6 years. Of course, you have Paris as like the classic example where they have just absolutely reversed the trend from car to bike, and it's evident when you're there. Now, I have not been to London, but I would venture a guess that it's evident when you're there as well. Meanwhile, in the United States, similar story in Detroit, Michigan, a place that I have been a couple of times. I don't know if I advise going, but there are worse cities to spend 24 to 48 hours in, and if you like cities, it's an interesting case study. first time I went there, I went on purpose to see what was going on. Reading all about this gentrification in the city and Whole Foods coming in to like try to anchor a gentrifying neighborhood, and it's gracias. And it was honestly a little bit underwhelming. And then my wife and I were there a few years ago, and same thing. Like, there are parts of the city that are kind of cool, but at the end of the day, you're not going to hold it up as some gem of urbanism. That said, they have added miles and miles of bicycle infrastructure in Detroit, and cycling is up. However, the other thing that's up, only slightly, I feel like the article that I was reading sort of overstated it a little bit. It's like we're dealing in small numbers here. Now, one fatality of a pedestrian or a cyclist is too many, but when you look at the chart, it's pretty much remained steady, and it's upticked a little bit. So I don't know if you can say, well, there's more people biking, so, well, of course, if there's more people biking, there's gonna be more people getting hit by cars. Like, that's just a sad reality based on the way things are set up in the United States and elsewhere. But, you know, there may be also people that are losing weight and better shape and having fewer heart attacks. I don't know, right? Like, it's such a complicated matter that you can't distill it down to one metric. But that said, the reality is that fatalities are up as the infrastructure goes up. And part of the equation, again, complicated matter, is that you do have a car-first mentality, and I don't know if there's a place where there is more of a car-first mentality, right? You have it in LA and really in all cities in the US, but man, like Detroit, right? It's the car capital of the world. It's a place where, I don't think it's like this anymore, but it used to be that if you weren't driving an American-made car, somebody would maybe look at you and give you the middle finger. I'm not joking, like that was a thing that I remember hearing about growing up. Like, there was a real disdain for people that, because Detroit, if you don't know, was like the capital of, I mean, it's the home of Ford, and it's where a lot of the production of motor vehicles happen in the United States. So a lot of people, their livelihoods rely on working in those factories, working in those plants. So there's really this, it can go both ways, right? And that's why I think cyclists even need to be somewhat skeptical, or at least careful, about bike lanes. Because yeah, the presence of bicycle infrastructure and more cyclists on the road, in one hand, is going to make you more visible and more aware to people who are driving, and maybe they're going to take greater care around you. But at the same time, many of them are going to maintain their aggressive attitude, and as we're seeing, a lot of them are going to actually get more aggressive and more angry because you're getting these apparent wins, because the bicycle infrastructure in their eyes is part of this anti-car crusade and is somehow impeding the flow of auto traffic. So maybe you get more aggression because of this. It really is a two-sided and a complicated thing, and the discussions, like I said the other day, they never consider the nuance. It's always a very black and white thing. The cycling advocates are like, well, we got to get bike lanes, and if we get bike lanes, these are victories against the other side. And then the other side just goes so extreme where they're like, well, anything that isn't about the car is part of a socialist political plot to control our movements and control our minds. Whether it's people in Edmonton freaking out because the city wanted to implement the principle of a 15-minute city, or whether it's conservative PMs in places like Calgary and Halifax and Toronto, trying to get bike lanes torn out, trying to turn back the progress because they perceive it as a political and social threat. I don't know. It blows my mind. Really, really blows my mind. So yeah, those are just two stories though. I think I want to have a long conversation about this. I don't want to like hit and run on it. So let's leave it there for today with London and Detroit. Then next time we revisit bike lanes, having trouble speaking in English today. Next time we revisit bike lanes, let's look at some of the controversies and try to dissect them and get into the reasons why they're happening and see if we can make maybe just a little bit more nuanced sense out of this entire mess. Thanks for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel for more, not just on bike lanes, but stories from the saddle as we ride around this beautiful city called Valencia, Spain.